Hey everyone, and welcome back to Daily Tuition. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can make this beautiful advanced grid layout using CSS. I'm going to show you how you can make this advanced grid system completely responsive for all the devices. So let's get started and see how to make this beautiful grid layout. I'm going to open the Visual Studio Code editor, and inside that, I'm going to open the tutorial folder. And inside that tutorial folder, I'm going to add the asset folder. Inside this asset, I have all the images which we are using in this tutorial. Don't worry, you can download the complete source code from the link provided in the description. So just download the source code and start coding along with me. So let's create a new file inside this root directory. Here I'm going to create a new file with the name index.html and specify here exclamation mark to create a simple HTML5 snippet and specify title here grid. Just out of that, inside the root directory, I'm going to create another file with the name style.css to specify styling to the index.html. And in the header section, here I'm going to link the style.css file. Just like this. Now, just out of that, inside this body, here I'm going to create a container, something like this. Using container, I'm going to specify max width to this division tag. Then I'm going to specify here mx auto class. Now I'm going to create both these classes inside the style.css letter. Let me first explain. I'm using container to specify max width and mx auto to center the content. So just out of that, once we have both these classes, inside this div, here I'm going to first create the outer grid. Let me first open my Finish website. In my Finish website, you can notice here I'm going to have two columns. This is the first column with 3 images, and this is the second column with 3 images. You can notice in the first column, we have 3 images. I'm going to create 3 nested grid to create this type of advanced layout. To the outer grid, I have one column, and inside that one column, I have 2 rows. In the first row, we have these 3 images, and in the second row, we have these 3 images. Then, in the inner grid, I have 2 rows and 2 columns. You can notice we have here 3 images in the first column and 3 images in the second column. And on the second row of the inner grid, I have 3 images in the first column and 3 images on the second column of the second row. And then I'm going to create a grid, and inside that grid, I'm going to create this 3 images grid layout, where I'm going to have the first image on the left side, second image on the right side of the grid, and the third image at the center of the grid. So let me just explain everything step by step and show you how you can create this grid layout. So inside this div, here I'm going to first create outer grid. And inside this outer grid, I'm going to create my inner grid. As I said, we are creating 3 nested grids. So let me first specify here some content. I'm going to say here outer grid. Then I'm going to specify here dot inner grid. This is going to create inner grid. Just out of that, I'm going to create here a simple grid. So I'm going to specify here dot grid and then specify here title grid. Something like this. Let me save the changes and open this index.html in the live server. So I'm going to right click here and say open with live server. I already have the live server extension installed in my VS Code. So I'm going to open this in the live server so I can get the live result in the browser. Now let me just toggle this window on the right side. Something like this. And back to the style.css. Now inside the style.css, I'm going to first select the container. As you know, we have the container inside the index.html. So I'm going to select the container first and then specify here max width, which is going to be 1536 pixel. So I'm going to specify the maximum width to this container. Let me specify background color to show you the result. As you can see, this is the maximum width of this container, right? Now, just after this maximum width, I'm going to center the content using mx auto. This class is going to allow us to center the content. So I'm going to say here margin left auto, margin right auto, and I'm going to add some margin top. Is going to be 10 em. This will add some top margin to this container, something like this. So this will center and add some top margin to this container. Just out of that, I'm going to select my outer grid, this one. I'm going to select that, something like this. And to this outer grid, I'm going to specify display, which is going to be grid. Then specify grid template columns to create columns inside grid layout. I'm going to say here grid template columns and repeat one column with mean, max, 0, 1 fr. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create here one column with the minimum 0 and maximum 1 fr value. So using min max, we specify the minimum and maximum value to this column. So I'm going to create here one column with min max 0, 1 fr. Just after these columns, I'm going to specify here row gap for em. This will add row gap between the outer grid. So this will just simply add gutter between all the grid items. Just after that, I'm going to select here inner grid. So I'm going to just copy this inner grid and specify that here. So I'm going to create inner grid, and to this inner grid, I'm also going to specify display grid. Then I'm going to specify here grid template columns. Repeat one column with min max 0, 1 fr, means one fraction. Then I'm going to specify here grid template rows. I'm going to create rows, one row, min max 600 pixel and 1 fr. So the minimum value of this row is 600 pixel and the maximum value is 1 fr. So I'm going to specify one row and one column layout to this inner grid. Just after that, I'm going to simply select the grid, this grid, and to this grid, I'm going to specify display flex. Flex direction is going to be column and gap is going to be 4 em. Save the changes and I'm going to have the result something like this. Now because we have 600 pixel height to this row, I'm going to have the space between this inner grid. Now if I specify some color to this inner grid, something like this, then you can see the width of this inner grid is 600 pixel. Now just after that, I want to specify background size to all the images. So to specify that, I'm going to select the grid and select all the descendant elements, and then specify here background size, which is going to be cover, as well as I'm going to pass here important keyword to override the previous property, and then specify here border radius, which is going to be 10 pixel, and box shadow is going to be 1 pixel, 10 pixel, 10 pixel, and RGB A color. The red is going to be 0, green is going to be 0, blue also going to be 0, and alpha is going to be 0.1. Save the changes, and now just after that, I'm going to specify some width to it, which is 100%, and height is going to be 35 em. Save the changes. Just after that, what I'm going to do is, inside this grid, I'm going to add my images. Now using division tag, I'm going to specify all the images. So I'm going to say here div img1, something like this. So this is going to create my first image. I'm going to specify background image to this division tag using this img1 class. Let me duplicate this 2 more times. This time I'm going to change this img2 and this is img3. Save this, back to the style.css, right down here. To the first image, I'm going to specify background image. So I'm going to just simply select the grid and then select img1. To this img1, I'm going to specify background. In the URL, in the single quote, I'm going to say dot / select the asset and img1.png file. As well as I don't want to repeat this image, so I'm going to specify here no repeat. That's it. Save the changes and scroll down. As you can see, you're going to have your first image here. Now we are using all this code for the small devices. So I'm going to click on the inspect and decrease the size of this window. You can see this is my first image. Let me just copy this, paste it down here, something like this, and this became img2, and I'm going to change this image to img2. So I'm going to have my second image here. I'm going to duplicate this. This became img3, and image is going to be img3. Save the changes. I'm going to have my third image here. You can notice. Now I'm going to do the same and create all my images classes. I'm using 12 images. So let me just copy and paste all my 12 images classes inside this tutorial to save your time. Something like this. So I'm going to have here 12 classes, and to all these classes, we specify the corresponding image. Now let me save the changes. Just after that, I'm going to back to the index.html, and now you can see I have my all images. Now what I want, when the viewport is greater than 1024 pixel, I wanted to create the advanced grid layout when the viewport is greater than 1024 pixel. To do that, I'm using a media query. So just scroll down, and here I'm going to create a media query for the screen size LG, means for 1024 pixel. So I'm going to call here at media, in the parenthesis I'm going to say main width 1024 pixel. The meaning of this media query is I want to apply all the classes of this media query block when the viewport is greater than or equal to 1024 pixel. And now inside this media query, I'm going to first select my outer grid. Let me copy this and paste this outer grid inside this media query. And now I'm going to change some properties here. If you want, you can remove this display property from this outer grid, because we specify this display at the top for the smaller devices. But I'm going to leave the display properties as it is for better understanding. And I'm going to just specify here grid template columns 1. Just for that, I'm going to specify here grid template rows, repeat 2 rows with min max 0 pixel and 600 pixel. So the maximum width of the column should be 600 pixel and the minimum width should be 0 pixel. Just out of that, I'm going to specify here row gap initial. So I'm going to specify initial value to this row gap when the viewport is greater than 1024 pixel. Let me save this. You can see I'm going to have the result something like this. Just out of that, I'm going to select the inner grid. So I'm going to say here dot inner grid, and to this inner grid I'm going to specify grid template columns, repeat 2 columns with min max 0 1 fr. So when I save the changes, I'm going to have here 2 columns. In the first column I have this inner grid, and in the second column I have my images. When I remove this content from this HTML, I'm going to have this image in the first column. Let me show you. If I remove this inner grid, save the changes, as you can see I'm going to have my images in the first column. Just for that, let me get rid of this outer grid as well. Save the changes, back to the style.css and scroll down. Just down here I'm going to select grid and select all the descendant elements, and then I'm going to specify here width is going to be auto and height is going to be auto. Just out of that, just scroll down, and here I'm going to create grid, and to this grid I'm going to specify different properties. When you scroll up, you can notice I have this grid here. To this grid I specify display flex and flex column. So now you can notice this is a type of flex box. I'm going to convert this flex box into grid layout when the viewport is greater than 1024 pixel. So here I'm going to select the grid, and then I'm going to specify here display is going to be grid. Grid template columns is going to be repeat 8 columns with min max 0 1 fr. Means I want to repeat the column. I want to create 8 column with the minimum value 0 and maximum value 1 fr. Just out of that, I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to say here grid template rows, repeat 8 columns with min max 100 pixel and 1 fr. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 8 columns and 8 row grid layout and specify that to this grid. And just after that, I'm going to create here row gap initial. Let me save this. As you can see, I'm going to have my all 3 images here. Now what I want to specify height and width to these columns. You can notice here I have some height and width to the first, to the second and to the third image. To do that, I'm using grid column start, grid column end, grid row start and grid row end CSS property. So let's see how to do it. I'm going to just simply select my first image. I'm going to say here grid img1. To this first image I'm going to say grid column start 1. So what I want to start my first grid means I want to start my first image from the first column. Then I'm going to specify here grade column end. I want to end my first image at fourth column. Then I'm going to say here grade row start. I want to start this grade column from the first row and end it grade row end and end it at fifth row. Let me save the changes and show you the result first. You can see this is going to increase the width and height of this image. So I'm going to specify value to this first column, and now let's specify value to the second column. Using this img1, I specify the width and height to this column using grade column start, grade column end, grade row start and grade row end. So I'm going to start this column from the first column and end it at fourth column right here. Then I'm going to start this column from the first row and end it at fifth row right here. Let me do the same for the second image. Here I'm going to specify dot grade. Then I'm going to select dot img2. So I'm going to select this second image now. Just for that, I'm going to specify all this property to this image 2. But now, instead of specifying all the values again to these all 4 properties, you have a simple way to specify all these values only with one line of CSS code using a property called grade area. Using this grade area CSS property, you can specify values to all these CSS properties. Let me first show you the syntax of this grade area. Now using this grade area, you specify value to all these CSS property, something like this. You simply specify the grade row start, then specify the grade column start, then specify grade row end and grade column end. So here I'm going to simply first specify the grade row start. I wanted to start my second column from the first row. So I'm going to pass here 1, then pass here /, and then I'm going to specify here grade column start. The second value is going to be 6. I want to start this image from the 6th column. As you know, we have 8 column and 8 row to this grid. I'm going to start this image from the 6th column. Then specify here / again. Then I'm going to specify grade row end. I want to end this row at 5th row and end this column at 9th column. So I'm going to specify here 9. So you can see how easy to specify value to all these CSS properties. That's it. Now if I save the changes, you can see my second column is also ready. Let's do the same thing for the third column. Here I'm going to select grade and select img3, my third image, this one. Now to this third image, I'm going to select grade area, and to this grid area, I'm going to specify 3. I'm going to start the row from the third row. Then I'm going to start the column from the third column, end the row at 8th column, and end the column at 7th. Let me save the changes. As you can see, I'm going to have the result something like this. Now, if you are confused with these values, just check out this syntax. Just for that, what I want to duplicate my first grid. So I'm going to copy this and paste it down here and change this image to img4. This became 5 and this became 6. Save the changes. And now as you can see, I have all my 3 images on the second column. But now you can see I also need to specify the same CSS properties to all these images. So you can just simply specify here comma and pass grid again, and then specify here img4 and so on. Now what if you have multiple grid items? In that case, you have to manually specify the class names inside this CSS. So to solve this problem, instead of this selector, we can simply select the grid and select all the descendant divs, and as you know, to the descendant divs, we select the first division tag using the pseudo selector called first child, something like this. So this is going to save a lot of time. When I save the changes, you can see I'm going to have the result what I want. Now just after that, I'm going to do the same for this second column. I'm going to select the grid, then select all the descendant divs, and to select the second div, of this grid layout, I'm going to simply specify here and child 2. When I save the changes, I'm going to have my second column here. And now to specify value to this third column, instead of img3, here I'm going to select all the descendant div with the end child 3. Save the changes. As you can see, I'm going to have the result what I want. Now this is going to be our first row of the inner grid. Let's create the second row. To create a second row, I'm going to copy this inner grid and paste that here. And as you know, we have here img6, so we start here from img7. This became 8, this became 9, this became 10, this became 11 and 12. Let me save the changes. As you can see, I'm going to have the result something like this. Now let me get rid of this background color and this background color as well. Now what I want to add some gap between this column. So what we are going to do is, I'm going to just scroll up, and to this inner grid, I'm going to specify column gap, which is going to be 5 em. Let me save this. You can see I'm going to have some gap between these columns. And at the end, in this media query right down here, to this first and to this second grid, I'm going to specify z index minus 99, just like this. Save the changes, and I'm going to have the result what I want. Now at the end, scroll up, and here I'm going to specify body, and to this body I'm going to specify background color, like this. Save the changes, and as you can see, our custom advanced grid layout is completely ready. If you minimize the viewport, you can see it's completely responsive for all the devices. Now I hope you understand how to make this beautiful grid layout using CSS. If you have any question about this video, don't forget to comment, share this video with your friends, like this video if you find anything useful, subscribe for more latest videos. That is all for now. I will see you in the next one.